A single father's world shatters when a trusted family member's betrayal tears his autistic son from his arms. Facing suspicion, isolation, and relentless accusations, he's forced into a desperate fight to prove his love and his innocence. With the odds stacked against him, and even his own relatives turning away, one father must rally a team of unexpected allies to bring his boy home. But the truth behind the accusations will shock everyone, and forever change what family means. Will love and truth be enough to save what matters most? Find out in this unforgettable, real-life story of heartbreak, resilience, and hope. I used to believe that being a good father meant shielding my son from everything painful in this world. But life has a way of teaching you that love isn't about shelter, it's about standing in the storm with someone, even when everything else crumbles. My name's Daniel Williams. I'm 38, and for the last 9 years, I've raised my son Mikey on my own. Mikey has semi-low functioning autism. That means some days are filled with wonder and joy, and others are, well, a series of breakdowns, meltdowns, and confusion, for both of us. But he's my world. He doesn't make eye contact much. Doesn't speak in full sentences. But when he laughs, when he flaps his hands and bounces in excitement, I feel like I've done something right in this chaotic world. His mother left us when Mikey was 2. She said she couldn't handle it. Those were her exact words. I still remember Mikey holding onto her legs, crying, and her pushing him away. I told myself I'd never let anyone hurt him again. I didn't care that people stared at us in stores, or that I'd never have a full night's sleep again. He was my son, and I'd die before letting anything bad happen to him. That's why, when my cousin Vanessa invited us to her wedding, I felt hopeful. Mikey loves music and lights and clapping. Weddings check all his boxes. I hesitated, but she said, "We'd love to have both of you. It'll mean a lot." I believed her. Vanessa and I grew up close. She was like the older sister I never had. I was the poor cousin, always one step behind. She was the golden girl, varsity everything, perfect smile, endless charm. But I never felt judged by her. At least not until recently. Still, I decided to go. I even bought Mikey a little blue suit. He flapped and squealed when he saw it. He kept saying, "Wedding! Vanessa! Dancing!" over and over. It melted me. The rehearsal dinner was our first test. I'd prepped Mikey for days. Brought noise-canceling headphones, his tablet, fidget toys, the works. We arrived early so he could get used to the space. Everything was going fine. He was rocking gently in his chair, whispering numbers to himself. Calm. Regulated. Then Vanessa made a toast. She thanked her fiancé, her parents, even her high school volleyball coach. When she finally looked at us, her smile dropped a fraction. "And to my cousin Daniel," she said, "who's here with his son. It's not easy bringing special guests to formal events. But we're all trying our best to be understanding." People chuckled politely. My face burned. I tried to brush it off. But then Mikey, overstimulated, let out a loud squeal. The room went silent. Vanessa turned, fake laughed, and said, "Guess someone's had enough already." It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like Mikey was a burden. Like we were a joke. I saw a few people glance at each other, smirking. I stood up without a word, gathered Mikey's things, and left. He didn't understand. Kept asking, "No cake? No cake?" I held back tears the whole ride home. I stayed up all night wondering whether we should skip the wedding. But Mikey kept practicing his "I love you, Vanessa" video we'd recorded for her. He was so proud of it. I couldn't take that away. So I made a decision. We'd go. But I wasn't going to let her pretend everything was okay. I was going to speak my truth, calmly, respectfully, but truthfully. I didn't know it then, but that speech would change everything. And it would cost me more than I ever imagined. The day of the wedding, Mikey was up at 5 a.m., already dressed and twirling in his suit. He kept repeating, "Dancing! Vanessa! Dancing!" I didn't have the heart to tell him that after last night, part of me didn't want to go at all. But he'd practiced that video message 100 times, and I wasn't about to let someone like Vanessa take that joy away from him. We arrived just as guests were filing into the church. I kept Mikey close, my hand gently resting on his shoulder. I could feel eyes on us, the kind of attention that pretends to be polite but scans for something off. I've gotten used to that look. But it stung worse today. During the ceremony, Mikey did great. He rocked a little in the pew, hummed quietly, and pressed his headphones tighter whenever the organ swelled. I had prepared cards to help him follow along. Bride walking, clapping soon, quiet time. It worked. He stayed calm. The reception was where things changed. The ballroom was filled with clinking glasses, buzzing voices, flashing lights. A sensory minefield. I picked a table near the back, close to the exit, just in case. Mikey munched on plain bread rolls and played with a poppet fidget toy. He was happy. Then came the speeches. Vanessa's father went first. Then the maid of honor. Finally, Vanessa stood and called for a few words from the family. She looked right at me. Daniel, care to say something? Her smile was tight. Forced. I stood, hands trembling slightly, and walked up to the mic. Mikey stayed seated, waving at me. Hi everyone. I began. I'm Daniel. Vanessa's cousin. Some of you probably know me, and some of you maybe only recognize me as the guy always chasing a little whirlwind named Mikey. A few chuckles. I wasn't sure we'd be welcome here. But Mikey was so excited, and I couldn't say no. He's been practicing something special for this day. I pulled out my phone, tapped play, and held it up to the mic. The room quieted. On the screen, Mikey smiled into the camera, blinking rapidly, and said, Hi Vanessa. Happy wedding. I love you. Dancing. Cake. A soft ripple of laughter and a few sniffles filled the air. One woman actually teared up. I continued, voice steady. Raising a child with autism has been the greatest challenge and the greatest honor of my life. Every milestone is a miracle. And today, being here, accepted, included, means more than I can say. That last part was a lie. But it felt like the right thing to say. I wanted Mikey to have this moment. I stepped down to scattered applause. Vanessa clapped, but her expression was icy. The rest of the evening passed without incident. Mikey even danced for a few minutes, bouncing in place near the DJ booth. I caught Vanessa watching us once, her eyes narrow, her jaw tight. We left a little early. I carried a sleepy Mikey to the car, whispering how proud I was of him. It felt like a small victory. But 2 days later my world shattered. I was chopping vegetables when I heard the knock. 2 strangers stood at my door. One flashed a badge. Mr. Williams? We're with Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous report regarding your son's well-being. I laughed at first. I genuinely thought it was a mistake. But within minutes they were inside. Asking questions. Inspecting my fridge. Taking notes on the peeling wallpaper, the pill bottles on the counter, Mikey's worn-out mattress. Mikey sensed something was wrong. He started stimming hard, spinning, flapping, chanting nonsense. I tried to soothe him, but they misread it. He's clearly distressed. One of them said. Because you're here. I snapped. Then came the words I'll never forget. We're placing Mikey in temporary care while we conduct a full investigation. I blacked out for a second. I think I begged. I remember grabbing Mikey's backpack and stuffing in his toy giraffe. He screamed when they took him. A sound I've never heard before. Not from any child. Not from any living thing. My knees hit the floor when the door shut. And in that silence I knew. It was her. Vanessa had made the call. The next morning was the first time I woke up in a silent house since Mikey was born. His absence was everywhere. His abandoned fidget toys, the faint echo of his bedtime songs, the way the sunlight hit his empty chair. I sat in the kitchen, my hands numb, replaying the moment CPS took him away over and over in my mind. I kept seeing his face, wet with tears, pressed to the window of their car as they drove him off. It felt like something in me had been amputated. But grief turned quickly to fury. I knew, without a shred of doubt, that Vanessa was behind this. She'd been so perfectly civil at the wedding, but that icy look when I gave my speech was burned into my memory. The timing was too precise. And the things CPS said they were tipped off about neglect, unstable home, failure to provide adequate care, were straight out of the mouth of someone who never spent a real day with us. I called my sister that afternoon. She hadn't been at the wedding, she lives on the other side of the country, but she's always been my anchor. When I told her what happened, she didn't hesitate. "You need to fight," she said. "You need help, Danny." So I started making calls. First, Mikey's pediatrician, Dr. Clements. She'd seen us through every fever, every panic attack, every medication adjustment. She was appalled and promised to write a letter to CPS. Next was his teacher, Ms. Harding. She'd worked with Mikey for 2 years, had documented everything from his progress to the routines I'd built for him at home. She agreed to speak to any investigator, any judge. But none of it changed the fact that my son was gone. CPS told me nothing. They couldn't tell me where he was, only that he'd been placed in appropriate foster care. They said I'd get a hearing in a few weeks. Weeks. I almost smashed my phone against the wall. It took me days to pull myself together enough to meet with a lawyer. Her name was Elizabeth Tran, a bulldog in a tailored suit, recommended by a friend in my autism parents group. I showed her everything, Mikey's IEPs, therapy notes, photos of our routines. She listened quietly, then looked me straight in the eye. "They have to prove neglect, Daniel. Not just accusations. We'll get him back. But you need to prepare for a fight. And whoever reported you, they won't just stop." She was right. Over the next few days, I started hearing the whispers. Vanessa's mother called, pretending to check in, but quickly veering into questions about Mikey's medications. An uncle I hadn't spoken to in years texted, "Is everything okay at home?" It was clear, Vanessa had sown doubt throughout the family. I spent those days assembling an army. Dr. Clements wrote her letter. Ms. Harding provided daily logs. Mikey's therapist, who'd helped him learn to use words for pain and fear, agreed to testify. Elizabeth gathered everything, building a case like a fortress. Still, every night I lay awake, haunted by the same question: what if I just stayed quiet at the wedding? What if I hadn't pushed for Mikey to be included, hadn't drawn attention to us? But that's not who I am. That's not who Mikey needs me to be. The day of the first court hearing, I sat outside the building, clutching Mikey's favorite giraffe toy. My hands shook. I didn't know if he was safe, if he was being cared for, if he was scared, or hurt, or lost. I tried to summon every ounce of strength I had left. For him. For us. The courtroom was cold, both in temperature and spirit. The CPS caseworker sat on one side with a stack of papers. Elizabeth sat next to me, steady and unyielding. I glanced behind me, half expecting to see Vanessa sitting smugly, but she wasn't there. Instead, 2 of my aunts sat together, their faces tight with worry. The rest of the family stayed silent, waiting for the dust to settle before choosing sides. The judge, a stern woman with tired eyes, opened the proceedings. She read the report aloud, words like neglect, unsafe environment, inconsistent medical care. I gripped the giraffe toy in my lap until my knuckles whitened. They made it sound so clinical, so black and white. Like Mikey was a problem to be managed, not a boy who counted every stop sign on the way to school and hugged me fiercely when the world got too loud. Elizabeth stood first. She presented Dr. Clements's letter, meticulously outlining Mikey's appointments, the therapies I'd juggled, the progress he'd made. Ms. Harding submitted her logs, noting Mikey's improvements at school and the support I'd provided at every turn. Even Mikey's speech therapist submitted a video of him practicing new phrases at our kitchen table, his voice hesitant, but determined. Then CPS countered with their inspection photos, peeling paint, prescription bottles on the counter, a torn bedsheet. I felt shame creep up my spine. I wanted to explain how I'd bought second-hand everything to afford his therapy, how the medication bottles were locked up each night, how I'd never once left Mikey hungry or afraid. But you can't cram a lifetime of devotion into a 60-second rebuttal. The judge watched me carefully. Mr. Williams, do you have anything to say for yourself? My voice shook, but I spoke anyway. I am all Mikey has. I know his routines, his triggers, what calms him down, and what makes him smile. I'm not perfect, but I fight for him every day. Please don't take him away. There was a pause so long I thought I might collapse. Then the judge ordered a temporary, supervised visitation schedule, 2 hours a week at a CPS office. It was a small victory, but I clung to it like a lifeline. The first visit nearly broke me. Mikey came in with a stranger, his new foster parent. He looked thinner, hollow-eyed. He clung to his giraffe and barely glanced at me. When I knelt down and said, "Hey buddy, it's Daddy," he didn't answer. He just rocked back and forth, mumbling. I held him anyway, whispering all the things I wanted him to know, that this wasn't forever, that I was fighting, that I loved him more than anything. Elizabeth worked relentlessly. She requested home studies, lined up more witnesses, our neighbor, Mikey's old babysitter, even the pharmacist who filled his prescriptions. The case started to shift. The narrative of neglect began to unravel. I saw the caseworker's confidence fade as our evidence stacked up. But just when I thought we might win, another bomb dropped. 1 week before the final custody hearing, a new report came in, this time from Vanessa's father, my uncle. The accusations were nearly identical, but even more venomous. Daniel's unstable. Mikey's development is being stunted. He's emotionally abusive. The paperwork landed on Elizabeth's desk like a fresh wound. I felt my hopes sputter. How could I fight when the enemy wore my family's face? How could they believe I'd ever harm my own child? Elizabeth's jaw tightened. They're escalating, Daniel. But we're not done. The more they lie, the more desperate they look. Just keep holding on. I wanted to believe her. But as the court date drew closer, I wondered if Mikey and I would ever make it back to the life we once knew, or if that life was already gone for good. The night before our final hearing, I barely slept. I sat at the kitchen table, the empty seat across from me a constant reminder of Mikey's absence. I scrolled through old videos on my phone, Mikey reciting the alphabet, blowing out birthday candles, spinning in circles with a look of pure joy. Each memory felt like a promise I was desperate not to break. Elizabeth called early the next morning. "We need one more thing," she said. "Proof that this is a coordinated effort, not real concern." Her voice was gentle but urgent. I knew she was right. Vanessa and her father had made it their mission to destroy what little peace Mikey and I had left. The rest of the family, too polite or too scared, remained on the sidelines. That morning at the courthouse, I saw more familiar faces in the hallway. Some avoided my eyes, others nodded in forced sympathy. My Aunt Marcia, usually warm and chatty, kept her distance. I wondered how many of them believed Vanessa's lies, how many just didn't want to get involved. Inside the courtroom, Elizabeth was a force of nature. She picked apart every new allegation, highlighting the recycled language between Vanessa's and her father's reports. She read testimony from Mikey's school counselor and our neighbor, both of whom vouched for the stability and warmth of our home. Still, the CPS worker looked uncertain. "There have been multiple reports from different family members," she pointed out. "We can't ignore that." I stared at the table, rage simmering beneath my skin. I wanted to shout, to tell the judge about Vanessa's humiliation, the whispers, the way she twisted every good thing Mikey did into ammunition. But I stayed quiet, trusting Elizabeth to do the talking. Then something unexpected happened. My cousin's husband, Thomas, approached Elizabeth in the hallway during a recess. He looked tired, defeated, but determined. "I can't watch this anymore," he whispered. Vanessa told her dad exactly what to say. She practiced it with him. I recorded her coaching him the night before he made that call. He handed Elizabeth his phone. The audio was clear, Vanessa's voice, firm and rehearsed, walking her father through every accusation. Elizabeth's eyes widened. "Are you willing to testify?" she asked. Thomas nodded. When court resumed, Elizabeth played the recording for the judge. The effect was immediate. CPS staff exchanged glances, the judge's jaw tightened, and even some of my skeptical relatives looked away in shame. Vanessa wasn't there to defend herself. Her father, red-faced and shaking, declined to speak further. By the end of the day, the tone in the room had shifted. The judge ordered Mikey's immediate return, pending a final home inspection. CPS would close their file unless new, credible evidence came forward. I left the courthouse numb, relief and exhaustion mingling until I didn't know what to feel anymore. I called my sister, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. She told me over and over that we'd made it, that I'd done the impossible. But I knew Vanessa wouldn't give up so easily. The damage she'd done couldn't be erased with one court order. The trust in our family was broken, and the wounds were deep. I wondered what Mikey would remember, if he'd ever feel truly safe again. That night, as I prepared his room for his return, I made a promise to myself. I would never let anyone, family or not, come between us again. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Mikey came home the following afternoon, led through the door by a CPS worker whose expression flickered with relief. He clung to his backpack, clutching his battered giraffe with both hands. When he saw me, he paused, eyes wide, uncertain. For a few seconds, I wasn't sure he'd come to me at all. But then he broke into a run, burying his face in my chest, sobbing so hard his whole body shook. I rocked him back and forth on the floor, whispering, you're home, you're safe." My own tears landed on his hair. It felt like breathing again after weeks underwater. The days after his return were a blur of cautious joy. I cooked all his favorite foods, rebuilt his bedtime routine, and sat with him while he played in silence. The house slowly filled with his sounds again, his humming, his hand flapping, his delighted squeals when I brought home a new puzzle. Still, he startled easily. Loud noises sent him running to his room. For a while, he only spoke in whispers. Meanwhile, word of Thomas's recording spread through the family like wildfire. The family group chat exploded with messages, some furious at Vanessa, some in disbelief, others quietly apologizing to me. My uncle, Vanessa's father, called to apologize in a strained voice. He said he'd been manipulated, that he just wanted to help his daughter. I wanted to scream at him, but all I managed was, "You almost destroyed us." He broke down crying. Vanessa didn't reach out. She disappeared from family gatherings and social media. My aunts tried to mediate, suggesting forgiveness, but I refused to make peace with someone who could harm Mikey to settle a grudge. Then, one Sunday, the family staged an intervention, not for me, but for Vanessa. Even her husband, Thomas, stood against her, describing her obsession, her manipulation, her outright lies. They played the recording for anyone who hadn't heard it. Vanessa tried to claim she was protecting Mikey, but nobody believed her anymore. She left in tears, her once adoring circle now a wall of silence. The change in the family was immediate. Relatives who'd kept their distance started inviting us to dinners again. Mikey's cousins included him in games, learning his quirks and finding ways to communicate. Even the most skeptical relatives started asking questions about autism, eager to understand and support him. I wasn't sure I could ever forgive Vanessa, but I found myself letting go of the bitterness, if only for Mikey's sake. He needed family, and I wouldn't let her darkness steal that from him forever. Still, I kept every piece of documentation, every email, every court record. I knew trust would take time to rebuild, and I refused to be caught off guard again. As summer faded and autumn crept in, Mikey and I found ourselves stronger than before. We'd survived. But more than that, we'd changed the way our family saw us, saw him. He was no longer just the difficult one. He was loved, included, accepted. And for the first time in a long while, I believed we could finally begin to heal. It took months for the dust to truly settle. Even after the courts closed the case, I found myself jumping at every unexpected knock, every unknown number on my phone. But slowly the fear faded, replaced by something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Our family wasn't perfect, but the ordeal forced them to face their own prejudices and ignorance. Cousins who once ignored Mikey at gatherings now greeted him with patient smiles, offering his favorite toys or learning a few words of his sign language. My aunt started volunteering at local autism support groups, telling anyone who'd listen how much they'd misunderstood. The relatives who'd believed Vanessa's lies now went out of their way to make it up to us, sometimes clumsily, sometimes with unexpected tenderness. Mikey, for his part, blossomed. School became his sanctuary again. His teacher, Miss Harding, celebrated every tiny achievement with us, sending home notes about his progress and the friends he was making. His therapist said the change in him was clear, less anxious, more expressive, more willing to try new things. He even joined the school's music group, banging on the drum with a proud, focused grin. As for me, I learned how much fight I had left. Elizabeth, my lawyer, stayed in touch. She called just to check on us, never letting me forget that we hadn't just survived, but won. Dr. Clements, Ms. Harding, and even the pharmacist who once doubted my late-night pickups became part of our extended circle. I made sure Mikey knew that our family was bigger and braver than anyone who tried to tear us apart. Vanessa never tried to contact us again. Word was she moved out of state, her marriage to Thomas quietly ending. I didn't celebrate her downfall. I only hoped that, wherever she went, she would reckon with the harm she caused. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would be for my own peace, not hers. One crisp October afternoon, the family held a picnic just for Mikey. There was music, cake, balloons, every detail chosen with his needs in mind. Mikey spun in circles on the grass, laughing as his cousins clapped along, and for a moment, I watched him without the familiar ache of worry. He was just a boy, surrounded by love. I pulled him close as the sun dipped low, feeling his heartbeat against mine. "We're safe, buddy," I whispered. "No one's ever taking you from me again." And as Mikey grinned up at me, I finally believed it. We'd found our place. Not because our family was flawless, but because we'd fought for the truth, and for each other, no matter the cost.